Republican rival. Matt Schlapp's the chairman of the American Conservative Union. Susan Page is Washington bureau chief with USA Today. And Ken Vogel is the chief investigative reporter with Politico. Susan, you've covered politics. You covered on the front page. Why are people saying, at least, they want this good doctor to be our next president?
Well, because Republicans are very interested in an outsider, and Ben Carson gives them an outsider who lacks kind of the bluster and the boastfulness of Donald Trump. He also comes across as a very spiritual man, deeply religious, and I think that's really appealing to evangelicals who are so important in the Republican coalition.
So we want a spiritual leader, as a chaplain, as president.
And when people are interested in an outsider, when they don't trust people who have had political experience, he gives them an alternative to Donald Trump.
I don't know what to say. So go on.
All right,
I have no idea even how to ask the question because I can't fathom the answer at this point. I don't get it.
Is this
some kind of strange American resort to basics because we're facing a world of fundamentalism and zealotry, and so we have to respond to. They always say when you're fighting a war, you end up like your enemy. Are we going back to some sort of basic simpletonism as our way of dealing with life now? It's too complicated. Monetary policy, fiscal policy, too complicated. Climate change, too complicated. ISIS, too complicated. Let's go back to basic truths. That may not even be truths.
Yeah, there's always been an inclination to sort of fetishize the outsider, and even more so the citizen public servant. The reference to the founders as being all outsiders with no public experience, no public service experience, which is not true. But there is also a deeper irony here, which is I've covered some of these state legislatures that have citizen state legislatures where they only serve for part of the year, and their biggest complaint, almost to a man or a woman, is that they didn't have enough time to bone up on these issues to successfully be able to make decisions to run a state, let alone running a country and bragging about your lack of track record in public service. It's a little bit weird and ironic.
Well, here's how Carson responds to critics who question his lack of experience. Let's watch him.
I love it when people come up to me and they say, but you've never been elected to any public office. You can't possibly know how to do anything. Well, let me tell you something. The Ark was built by amateurs. The Titanic was built by professionals.
Okay, how's that work?
That's a great line.
A great line for what's the point? That there was an ark built in biblical history. There's an account of building an ark with the whole world flooding. I know the story.
You're getting too literal.
We all grew up with and we know the Titanic sank. How does that argue that amateurs are better than experts at shipbuilding? Would you get in a boat that was built by amateurs, or would you go into a boat that was built by professionals? What's the argument here?
Chris, I don't have to tell you that what he is doing is responding to the fact that Republican voters in this primary season, they're not looking for issue papers. They're looking for personal characteristics.
How about logic?
They want someone
Where
who's
is the
honest,
logic and that the Titanic was built, that it went into an iceberg in the early part of the 20th century, and somehow that's an argument against good shipbuilding?
But is it fair that the Republican voters are looking, including at the Republicans who they sent up to be president, and they don't like everything that they've seen, and they like the idea
that's
of somebody...
an illogic. It's an illogic to argue because some people have blown it and have been bad politicians that we should go to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing.
But you have to admit that the wrong track figures...
I don't have to admit this.
The wrong track figures are higher than they've been in so long.
And therefore pick somebody who's certifiably unprepared.
That's not what I'm arguing for. I'm telling you that the electorate is saying try a new model.
So you're justifying whatever they want.
No, I'm telling you what they want.
Oh, they do. And what do they want?
They want somebody who's going to take a 2x4 to Washington, D.C.
I don't see that with him.
I see that that's what the Republicans want. Look at poll after poll.
I see do no harm. I see a guy who looks harmless, who's a nice fella, who speaks plainly and with some generosity in a way that just makes you feel better listening to him.
But he's also not beholden to what they view as people in this town.
Well, Susie recently asked Ben Carson if he'd want to be a surgeon with no experience to operate on his brain. Well, here's what he told USA Today's Capital Download.
This writer said, you wouldn't want a surgeon to operate on your brain if he had never done it before, if he had no experience in surgery. Why would we want a president who has never had experience in that area?
And somebody who would ask a question like that clearly has no concept what they're talking about. They don't realize that neurosurgery is considerably more complex than politics. They're not even close in terms of the things that are required in order to be able to do them.
So now he's stepping down intellectually to an easier job.
Well, and
that's what he said.
I don't doubt that brain surgery is a really tough job. But you know what? Being president is a really tough job in its own way and involves, being Chief of the Armed Forces, dealing with foreign leaders, leading the global economy. It's a tough job.
What has it got to do with brain surgery?
Well, his view was if you could do brain surgery, which is a really hard thing, you can do being president, which he says is not as hard.
And isn't there a happy...
these are just you're playing to this guy.
What about a happy
Susan,
medium?
You're acting like there's a logic to that. Well, there's no logic to that. We've had people who've been engineers like Herbert Hoover got it completely wrong.
That's right.
We've had Jimmy Carter, and I consider a great chief executive. All right, I can argue his values, but his ability to get things done, we can argue about. And I just don't see why anybody would say somebody who's skilled at something completely different would be adequate to the president. It's about public leadership. It's about ability to lead the people in sometimes difficult directions, getting them through the Civil War, getting Washington, getting us through the Revolutionary War. It's getting us through the Great Depression, through World War II. It takes incredible skill at leading a people of millions. What has that got to do with brain surgery by yourself in an operating theater?
So that's, I think, a very legitimate argument, and one that I would assume that Ben Carson's opponents in the Republican Party, and if he was nominated, the Democratic nominee, would be making.
Look, not having experience is a problem. Look at the president we have. He did not have a lot of experience going into this job.
Who's this?
Barack Obama.
Are you, is the American Conservative Union now arguing the advantages of complete lack of preparation? Is that what you're arguing?
I'm just trying
to put
your
pandering. You are pandering.
I'm putting your argument on its head.
No, you're not.
Or maybe
so anyway, Dr. Carson put out a lengthy post on Facebook last week. By the way, is Facebook one of those things you just sort of make up on the way, right? These are somewhat scientific. Anyway, hitting back at critics who question his lack of experience. He writes, I have no political experience. Every signer of the Declaration of Independence, everyone, had no elected office experience. Well, to set the record straight, Dr. Carson, all 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were serving in the Continental Congress at the time, and we found roughly 50 of them had served in elected positions before then. Jefferson served in the Virginia House of Burgesses. John Adams served in the Massachusetts Assembly. Ben Franklin served in the Pennsylvania Assembly. Sam Adams served in the Massachusetts Assembly. John Hancock served in the Boston Assembly. All through it, we knew they were professionals, the guys who took the thing seriously. They were all men, of course, at the time. And to just say blanket, where does he get his information from? Matt,
well, I think...
where does he get his information from about the pyramids being granaries? Where does he get that information when Egyptology has been going on for centuries?
Chris, he's wrong. He's wrong. He's wrong on these things. There's no question.
Okay, that's what I want.
But he's speaking to the American people who are saying, look, we think it's broken, guys, and we want to try something new.
Well, you go to church even, and you get a sermon. You still expect the sermon, even though it's theological, to be based on fact.
That's right.
And he
doesn't base his stuff on fact.
But he delivers some of these statements that are either factually inaccurate or, kind of put downs, like the way that he said that Susan had no clue what she was talking about. It was just in that calm, sort of even-keeled demeanor, and often wrapped in sort of the language of faith that takes some of the edge off.
Well, let's go back to something and see what we're seriously talking about here. Noah's Ark, okay? I didn't like the movie much, but I did like the story. And there was an ark, a boat that had each one of the animal species in it, one of each, male, female, so they could all reproduce afterwards. And the whole world, they accumulated all the species we have today in those, because if you don't believe in evolution, you got to believe they were exactly the same then, several thousand years ago. And that boat survived 40 days of flooding. Okay, we know that. That's a story. That's a story. Okay, it may be allegorical, it may be whatever, apocryphal, whatever, but it's a story told to people in the ancient times in the Old Testament. What relevance is that to today except as a story? It's not a fact. It's a story.
There's certainly not a whole lot of relevance to running the United States of America. And I would even point out...
Well, then why is he... No, he's saying he uses that to argue that amateurs are better than professionals.
And
okay?
First of all, I would also point out that, in fact, God, in addition to giving Noah the blueprint for the ark, actually provided sort of job specifications of the types of people who you want to have, the carpenters building the ark. So nor is it true that these are all amateurs, but clearly he is using it as an argument, again, an appeal to evangelicals, an appeal to religious voters, but a way to suggest that somehow his greatest weakness, the lack of experience in government, which, let's make no bones about it, is a great weakness, is not going to be an impediment from him being a good president.
There are biblical references over and over again where God picks somebody who's an ordinary Joe to do something great. Right. And that's his point. The Hillary Clinton road to the presidency isn't the road necessarily we need today. And that's the point he's making.
So that's an argument, but that's
real
not
argument.
You don't go back to Noah's Ark to make that argument.
Well, maybe you should be coaching him.
I'm baffled. But if you want to get, sarcastic with me, I can live with it. I mean, I just think there's a problem with this guy. But anyway, we'll see.